signed in, please do so. It's over there somewhere. It's just a sheet of paper. I'm Fatima. I am a history and theater major, and I am one of the career center interns for arts and culture. And this is Aisha.
Yep. Hi, I'm Aisha. I'm a freshman and I'm also hoping to be a bio major and I'm also an intern.
So if you don't know about career communities, we're a team of about, here it says 30. I don't think we're 30 anymore. We're a little less, but we just connect Hamilton students with alumni and career fields of interest so that they can learn about opportunities of what they should do after graduation. So we helped organize today's event, and we're going to talk to the alumni you guys have been hearing about for the past few minutes, and we're just gonna ask them questions about their careers in music, and they can give you guys some advice. And yeah, when we're done giving our questions, we're gonna open the floor to you guys, so you guys can ask them whatever you want. And yeah, that's really just the flow of the event, just a chill 1 hour talk session. So it should be fun. Okay, so just kind of the first question to get us started. What was your guys' kind of like passion for music, and how did that develop at Hamilton and throughout your careers?
Wes, you want to go first? You want me to go first?
Uh, I'll go first. I'll kick us off. Why not? So, hello to everyone. My name is Wes Hughes. I am a film composer currently based in Los Angeles, which is why I have this balmy background behind me. So if we're talking about, kind of how Hamilton really inspired my love of music and sort of what it did for me, it's like one of the most heartwarming stories of my life. When I was about 16 years old, I was doing what many people do when they're in high school, having their parents take them around to different colleges to visit. And I had a friend who was already attending Hamilton, and she said, "Hey, why don't you sit in on the then at the time professor of jazz, Doc Woods's improvisation class? And you could meet Doc, and we could show you around campus. Wouldn't that be nice?" So as the story goes, I sat in on this class with Doc Woods, and he pulled me aside after the class and said, "Listen, I see something in you, and if you were to come to Hamilton, I would make you into a monster." And for a 16-year-old saxophone player, that is exactly what you want to hear. And I had a lot of fun meeting the Hamilton students. The members of that improvisation class invited me to play a show at the little pub later that evening. And as a 16-year-old, you're like, "Oh, I get to play music amongst cool kids with alcohol. There could be something in this." Um, so that's kind of how I ended up going to Hamilton, as Doc helped pull me in. When I was actually at Hamilton, and I think this will be a theme for this talk of, interestingly, both Charlie and I had journeys where we started in completely different places. I was planning on being a professor of comparative literature, so I started off as a comparative literature major and switched halfway through Hamilton to music. But like when I did, and I kind of put it out there, you know what? I really want to, pursue a life of composing music for a living. It was this really wonderful thing where I could point to any single member of the music department, and not just the professors, the private lesson instructors, who all at various points in my Hamilton career pulled me aside and either said something kind or offered me an opportunity and really voiced their support for me. And, my story is really of how the music department as a village kind of raised me to where I am today. So it's the sort of thing where at your most vulnerable, you say, "This is what's most important to me." And I was immediately rewarded with all of these people being kind. So it was just, it was a moment where you kind of need the most support in your life in a way of just saying, "Hey, I'm at the beginning of this journey. I'm not good at anything yet, or I don't know what I'm doing." And then you have all these people show up for you and kind of take a chance on you. So me, Hamilton is kind of the story of the village that raised me.
Wes, that is such a wonderful story. I've never heard you tell it quite like that before, but I love it. I feel like you could write that and people, fantastic.
Oh yeah, no, I've been
Uh,
getting schmaltzy and nostalgic, thinking about this
no, I
stuff.
love it. It's wonderful. It's really good, and it's very true. I mean, there's a lot of resonances, no pun intended, with my story here, which is that I love music as long as I could remember. I got to Hamilton, and I was kind of like doing the rushing fraternity thing a little bit. wasn't clicking for me socially very well. And I was a high school jazz musician and I joined the jazz band. And all of a sudden it kind of felt like I found my community. It was like I got to be with these people, especially Wes, right? Wes and I bonded really early on.
That we
Freshman year,
did.
started a band. But tons of other people who we love, like our friend Tim and our friend Ian, and who's a year younger than us. And unlike Wes, but similar to Wes, that didn't put me on the path of wanting to like major in music. But what it did do, and what Hamilton did do, was it gave me a sense of intellectual confidence. So like when I came to school, I wanted to be pre-med and like major in Chinese. I had studied Chinese in high school. And I got maybe 2 semesters in, and I had this feeling that of like limited time. I had this feeling of like, I'm focusing on what I want my career path to be, but I also am recognizing that I don't have that much time left in this place. And what I really, really wanted to do was focus on the humanities. I wanted to focus on history and government and sociology. Strange window of time in your life where you get to really pick what you want to focus on. And Hamilton, because it only has that writing requirement, really gives you so much freedom to do that. So when I abandoned what then felt like kind of an imposed upon me, self-imposed career path, and instead focused on my own intellectual curiosity, my grades got a ton better, and I started feeling much more comfortable in my own shoes. I felt like I could be successful pursuing the stuff that I was interested in. So our friends Ian and Tim and I were in a band together, and we were recording a little EP my senior year. And Ian at the time, year younger at the time, he was doing the New York program. I think maybe they still do at Hamilton. We spent a semester in New York. And so we went to New York, we visited him, we recorded this EP at our friend's place. We were coming back, we were at Astor Place in Manhattan, and we were hungry. And my friend said, you want to get some falafel? And I said, sure. And so he led me down to this like subterranean falafel place. And I had the best falafel that I'd ever eaten in my entire life. And I had this moment, this really distinct change moment in my life, where I started, and, this is 2010, I want to say, or 11. I started like visualizing a mobile app about how you could connect with other friends and discover what restaurants they'd been to. Sounds very quaint now, in a kind of a new digital world, but it set me on a totally different path in my career. And the reason I think I trusted myself going down that path was because I had developed this intellectual confidence at Hamilton. I had picked a path at Hamilton. It had brought me to greater success. And once again, I was being confronted with this kind of gut feeling about what mattered to me. At that point, I already knew that that was a real sign, a real thing to follow. And that set me off on this longer story to entrepreneurship and then ultimately to where I am today, which is leading the product division for a streaming music company called AudioMac. Um, and I really do not think that I would be in the position that I'm in right now if it hadn't been for the risks that I was allowed to take at school, and then the ways in which I learned to trust myself after having taken those risks.
Hell yeah. Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah, it was really, yeah. So that's it's beautiful. I think here at Hamilton, just how much we promote that kind of open curriculum. And I think that's why most of us, at least, that's one of the reasons why we chose the school. Just the ability to have that kind of academic freedom is really important. Okay, so thank you for that. So you, Charlie, kind of touched upon this, but if you guys want to go more into this, now's your chance. After graduating from Hamilton, what was like that immediate postgraduate experience like? Did you attend graduate school? Did you use any mentors, Hamilton alumni, or any networks you established? Or like, what did you do? What was your plan if you had it?
So, because I had kind of become intoxicated with this new vision of wanting to pursue like a creative form of entrepreneurship, I I kind of spent the end of my college career um, thinking just about how I would find a way in there. And then when I graduated school, I got an internship at NPR Music. And during the days, I'd be working at NPR. But at night and on the weekends, I would be trying to get together with friends of mine or trying to make contacts for how to start a company. And I came up with a number of pretty bad ideas that didn't go anywhere. But one thing that did happen was that I hosted, when I was a senior, the little brother of a friend of mine on campus, so he could tour campus. And we had like this incredible fun night. And we like played music. I lived in 4002, which I don't know if it still exists. But and so you could play, you'd have like a band play in there, and we had made a real connection. And 3 years later, I was at a Christmas party. I've been really striving to try to figure out how to start a company that I would want to do. And he came to me and he said, a couple of friends of mine are starting this a new app. It's kind of like Instagram, but it's songs instead of photos and videos. And would you want to help with it? At that point, I was a music journalist, and so I knew journalists, and that could be kind of an interesting kind of personality to put onto an app like that. And 6 months later, they raised a round of venture funding, and they made me the first employee of the company. Um, that was a uh, major beginning to my career right there. 2015, becoming first the head of growth and then later the CEO of this social network for music. It's what gave me the professional experience ultimately to get hired by AudioMac, where I've been for the last 8 years. But it's again, I don't mean to be too punny here, although it's certainly like a temptation both of Wes and me. But there was any kind of an incredible amount of rhyming across my experiences from Hamilton through entrepreneurship. Stories that kind of kept ending up sounding like leading with a sense of self and striving towards something that felt, viscerally interesting to me, and then, staying at the table long enough for an opportunity to come at me. So I really did not set out, I think, ultimately to work in music per se, but because I had this experience in music, it kind of qualified me for opportunities in music and technology together, and that became my focus.
Heck yeah. But I would be remiss if we did not quote the late great Mark Twain when he said, "History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes." So,
Right. Right. And that's true. I've seen that again and again.
yeah. Well, for me, let's see. I think the thing that really defined my last 2 years at Hamilton was, um, just to kind of recap a little bit, I had been a comparative literature major. I switched majors at the end of what I think was my sophomore year to music. And kind of in my last 2 years at Hamilton, junior and senior year, for me, like I didn't really have much of a music theory background whatsoever. I had taken maybe like one introduction to music theory class with Hamilton's composer in residence at the time, Sam Pellman, who was a very formative teacher to me and several of the bandmates we've mentioned. But I didn't really have a foundation. So what I felt like at the time as I was graduating Hamilton is, you know what? I just crunched in a significant amount of music theory training without really digesting it. And like, yes, if you put like a voice leaning exercise in front of me, I can get through it. I can write like a jazz lead sheet. I can do kind of like these bread and butter sorts of things, but it wasn't really coalesced. So I was kind of looking for an opportunity after Hamilton, feeling as though I wasn't quite ready to enter the world as, say, like a composer's assistant, or even necessarily working on short films or kind of the entry level ways in which you start working with film as a composer. So as we were even vamping about earlier, I had two really fortunate things happen. The first was our longtime drummer and dear friend Tim Carmen, who played in Welland Hall not long ago, I think this past year with his band, and who we're very proud of because he's a very successful touring drummer now. He was going to Berklee College of Music. And he had suggested, "Hey, Wes, you should look into this." And since I'm originally from Massachusetts, I had gone to like the summer classes at Berkeley. Many of my high school mentors and sort of circle were Berkeley oriented. So I was very acquainted with that scene. And one day, senior year at Hamilton, I was at a jazz club in Cambridge, Massachusetts called the Regatta Bar. And I was seeing an old acquaintance of mine, Ron Carter, who's a very famous jazz bassist. And I had met Ron Carter at Lincoln Center in high school when I was performing there as part of the Essentially Ellington competition. And in high school, Ron Carter had told me I should go to Berkeley, and I did not listen to him. I thought I was going to be in high school, like, pursuing history and archaeology. That's why I thought I was going to Hamilton. When I got to Hamilton, I decided it was comparative literature. We ended up in music. So when I spoke to Ron about it, he was very insistent at that point I go back to Berkeley. So in the summer between when I did end up going back to Berklee College of Music for a degree in film scoring in Hamilton, I interned in New York City at an animation company called Little Airplane Productions. And it's no longer around now, I think, but it was basically the heads of the department of the original Sesame Workshop, like the Sesame Street people. And then a couple of animators, like the lead animator from Disney's Tarzan was there. Their audio engineer did a lot of like Cool and the Gang's recordings, and then just randomly some auxiliary recordings for the Lord of the Rings movies. So it was really fun. So I did that for a summer. I went to Berkeley. And if we're bringing this back to like Hamilton networks and alumni and that sort of thing, one of the best things I ever did at Berkeley was studying with a good friend and former bandmate of me and Charlie's jazz mentor at Hamilton, Doc Woods, who was the director of the jazz program until quite recently when he retired. He had an old bandmate and friend named Shannon LeClaire. And she was, absolutely a wonderful, brilliant teacher to study with at Berkeley. She's a wonderful saxophone player. So if we're bringing this back to Hamilton, I got the opportunity to study with her, and she had some funny stories about Doc from back in the day, and we had like an immediate rapport just from that connection. In terms of life at large, for me, like I had no connections to Los Angeles prior to moving there or to the film industry after Berkeley. So it was a lonely thing. I just put it out into the universe in like an older version of Facebook at the time. Hey, I'm moving to Los Angeles. I don't know anybody. Let me know if you exist and we're in the same network, sort of thing. Just so I wouldn't get lonely when I first moved there. And a friend of mine at Hamilton, as it turned out, had just gotten married. Her name's Amber Morris, and her husband was going to grad school at the American Film Institute. So, they happened to be moving to LA around the same time as me, and I moved them into their place, and, suddenly I had some friends in LA, and Ken, started asking me like, "Hey, I have, you know, AFI does not have a sound department. We have nobody who knows how to like record sound on film sets. Is that something you could do for some of my projects?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I started doing a sound for AFI student films, just being the guy who either holds what's called the boom mic, so the big microphone on a stick that you might see in like behind the scenes things in Hollywood. And I started meeting, my first group of directors and producers, some of who have become lifelong friends. And it's this funny thing where I can trace this one particular film set, the first film set I ever did with Ken, where everything absolutely went wrong. But on that set, I met a couple of my future best friends, and I can kind of trace every opportunity I've had in my career back to that one film set. So it's just one of those funny, lucky things in life where, by virtue of having one friend who moved to Hamilton and got married to the right person, suddenly, like, I have the whole story of, this current chapter in my life. And, the real fun thing about Amber she's quite successful now too. Also in Hollywood, she works for one of the most prestigious costume companies in Los Angeles called Western Costume Company, and they're best known for kind of doing every big, Marvel movie or TV show you can think of. They do all the costumes. So Amber is being trained for leadership in that organization right now, and I'd imagine in a talk similar to this, maybe more geared towards Hollywood, like she'd be a wonderful panelist to have, just because she has an interesting story all her own.
So cool.
Thank you so much. Those were such good, interesting stories. I feel like you guys show how diverse the music industry is within jobs. So, what do you think is the most rewarding aspect, or like your favorite part of your job, if you were to narrow it down?
That's a good question because Wes and I are in within the music industry. It's such different, types of jobs. So, Wes, you want to go first?
Yeah, I got a really clean, easy answer for this. So as a composer, a lot of my job isn't just, being an artist and going off in a cave and writing something for my own benefit. Like that is a part of the job in a way. But really, it's collaborating with directors and editors and film producers and, a very diverse team of people who all have a point of view on what the film you're working on should be, what it should sound like, and especially how it should make you feel. So there's always a point in the process where I'm putting together my first presentations of, what I think if it's a more melodic, thematic type of film score, what the main melody should be. Since I write mostly horror music, maybe what the weird, creepy signature noises of the film will be. But there's always a point in that process where I'm giving a presentation or I'm just experimenting and improvising in front of, directors in my studio here and we'll suddenly kind of have a consensus and discover, hey, this is the sound of the film. We still have to write all the music. We still have to, kind of, land the ship from orbit and everything like that. But here's this little bolt of lightning in a bottle, and this is, the foundation on which we want to build everything else. And it's the most exciting feeling in the world, just imagining, once you have that little nugget, where that journey is going to take you. So for me, like just, that feeling, like, that's kind of the high I'm chasing on every project is just the discovery of what's going to be the sound of this film.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, I work in music technology, and one of the strange and amazing things that has happened in the last decade of my career is that this company that I work for, AudioMac, which is kind of like Bandcamp or SoundCloud or YouTube, if you guys are familiar, I'm sure you are. It's like a two-sided marketplace. So it's like listeners can listen, but also artists upload to the platform. And what's happened is we've achieved incredible product market fit in sub-Saharan Africa, which means we are building, the best product for that market. We now have over 50 million monthly users on the platform, and it's very dominantly in Ghana and in Nigeria, West Africa, but increasingly in East Africa too. And so, I run the product team at AudioMac. The product team is two people. It's me and a guy who reports to me. But working in product at a tech company means that you kind of decide what the thing is, and you work with engineering to build it, or with design to create the visual component of it, or marketing to get it to people. But this sort of core middle thing, in my view, um, is like, well, what is it? And then how do we follow it all the way down the track from it being an idea to being kind of like a realized thing that people can really use in the world? And as Wes and I have kind of repeated ad nauseum, we're true artists and we're true listeners. We're listeners and artists before we're in our careers. This is the place that we start from as teenagers and as college students. It's very core to who we are as people. And so I get to build. I get to sort of be the person working on figuring out what AudioMac is for hundreds of thousands of artists every month and for tens of millions of listeners every month. Um, that's a big responsibility. But part of what's fun about it, not intimidating about it, is that for however different I am from any individual listener or artist anywhere around the world who uses AudioMac, I'm also very, very similar to them. I have sort of the core impulse as a listener of I want to find something that I want to play. And as an artist, I want to find people who want to play my music. And so the way I often think about it is like these are the artist and the listener are like these two celestial objects. And the closer they come to one another, the stronger the force that acts upon each one. And so my goal and a lot of the joy that I get from my job is inhabiting both of those personalities in building this thing that has become kind of amazingly a significant way around the world when people listen to music.
Thank you so much. I feel like I love listening to music and I never really thought about like how to make the platform for people to listen to music. So that was really interesting to hear. Um so what is something that you think would be interesting or important for us to know, people that go to Hamilton right now, about this career path in general?
I came prepared with a link, so if you want to go first, Charlie, I'm going to throw a link in the chat for everybody.
Yeah, go for it. Um, so my feeling about the music industry, as Wes kind of said earlier, is it's really broad. I mean, it means many different things. There is, of course, like working for record labels, but then there's the technology angle of it, which is working for companies that, build the tools that we now use to make music. There is working in academia. There is, making the music itself, being a musician, as Wes is, and the many manifestations of that. And so, I think that there are really successful conventional paths that people can go down and build their careers. In my experience, an example of this is you get an internship at a record label, maybe you get hired onto a team, and then you start building your path through there. But I think Wes and I, correct me if I'm wrong, Wes, are probably best situated to talk about is a much more unconventional path where you kind of make your own story in front of you by seizing the opportunities that present themselves. I mean, I certainly got that out of hearing Wes's story about operating the boom mic on the film set. And it's certainly my story, from, touring a guy through Hamilton who later on uh, starts a startup. And so, one of the sort of the broader lessons I think coming out of college and building my career is a form of openness and like opportunism. Like it can feel like oftentimes there's long periods of time where you're not getting the thing that you dream of getting, but that in some ways can dazzle you in hindsight when you A, leave yourself open to that timeline being maybe longer than you expected, but also B, um, if you are open to being flexible and changing what that picture looks like. Like, you know, I started my postgraduate career thinking that I was gonna like start a company, I don't know, helping people find falafel shops, not literally, but sort of. But later on, the door opened for me, to come work on a startup, that was focusing on sharing songs. And, I think sort of an openness to opportunity and a stick-to-itiveness, a perseverance. Uh, I think those are two really, really powerful things for a person going into their career to have.
Yeah. Um, so a couple of things for me. The first is I put in the chat a link to a New York Times article. It came out, I think, about like 10 or 20 years ago at this point, probably 20 years ago. And it kind of touches a lot on in this funny way where basically what the article is it traces the lives of an entire graduating class of Juilliard students over like a 10-year period after their graduation. And it kind of talks about the ups and downs each of them suffered. So, how some of them became insurance underwriters or, struggled so much they had to leave the industry, or what it took for the few people who were successful, kind of how they found that success. So I think the disclaimer to, for this question is it's one of those questions where really it deserves its own college course because there's so much that needs to be said. So I think this article truncates and sort of coalesces a lot of, maybe what can be said for that. I'm not getting the sense we have like a lot of like hardcore music majors here, so I'm going to spare you what I was originally going to do, which is one of my favorite professors at Hamilton, who became a very dear mentor, was Sam Pellman, who was the composer in residence and directed a lot of the electroacoustic and digital music at Hamilton. And what he didn't matter if it was his Music Theory 101 class or a lot of his more advanced classes. He would always get out a little copy of a very famous book on counterpoint from 1725 called The Gratis ad Parnassum, The Steps to Parnassus. And This is this really quirky book. It's just a counterpoint in the style of this famous Renaissance composer. Um, but at the beginning, there's this little dialogue between the author and Palestrina, who was the most famous composer at the time, and it's basically a fan fiction, which makes it hilarious. But Palestrina in this, sort of fantasy version is saying, I kind of don't really want to take you on as a student of music because I think you want to become to become a musician, to become rich and famous. And the student Josephus says, no, 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 I want to become a musician for music's own sake. And that's kind of how he's able to convince in this 18th century music theory fan fiction, um, Palestrina to take him on as a student. And, if we think about this, Juilliard article, where I argue it's still very relevant today, it's important to understand that, and this speaks a lot to what Charlie's saying too, a career in music is insanely difficult. And what's difficult is you're going to be spending perhaps all of your time as a college student just learning how to be a good musician, taking private lessons, becoming a master of your instrument, learning music theory, nowadays specializing in recording technology because you often have to, write your own music, perform your own music, record, mix, and master your own music. And you're responsible for each leg of that process, which is either prohibitively expensive or requires, just hours and hours of work on your part. And in the midst of all that, what often gets lost is, the key word in show business is business. What you're really doing is starting a startup. And Charlie, I think has been very outspoken and, with respect to how difficult that is, how there's like a lot of unintuitive factors that go into starting your own business. And it's kind of this difficult thing where you're starting a service business for which there's no demand for your supply. So I think it's worth knowing anything music related, especially more a creative field. You have to go in expecting like, okay, really how I'm going to be successful is mastering a business model and kind of building that type of success for myself. And you also have to be flexible in different ways and really define what's this important part of the stream that you're chasing. For me, for instance, I moved to Los Angeles thinking I was going to be writing very artsy fartsy orchestral music for animated movies. And, in the trajectory of my career, after meeting with directors and saying, hey, I like you, I want to hire you, but I need a very different sound than I've heard from you. I need, Velvet Underground or, horror music or this other genre. It's sort of a choice of, do you want to pursue your own music and find an audience for that? Or do you want to say yes to these opportunities and expand yourself in different, interesting ways? So for me, like my choice was, and Charlie, I think, has spoken to making similar choices. I was like, yes, I love all music. Let's try new things. So for me, my trajectory has been becoming a horror composer mostly. Um, so like, could I have predicted that at Hamilton? Absolutely not. But going back to the heart of this question, a lot of what you have to do is not going to be told to you. You have to be a real self-starter. I think the best thing you could do at Hamilton, if you're not doing it already, have a real relationship with the Career Center is part one. And part two is you have the most goodwill no matter what you want to do as students, where you can say to anyone, hey, I'm a college student and I'm really interested in what you're doing. Could I buy you a coffee? Could we meet up for lunch? Could I just have an informational interview with you over Zoom or something like that? And that's a goodwill of if you're saying, hey, I'm a student and I'm reasonably professional, and maybe the Career Center is helping you with email etiquette, where not everyone's going to say yes, but you're going to have the best odds in your entire life that people will take an interest in you. And that can eventually open up doors if you hold on to those contacts. And, that person you're interviewing eventually says, hey, I have an opening at my company for an intern or an entry level job. And since you're the person who I've given attention to, or you seem competent and have good soft skills, I'd like you to consider applying. Um, so the best way to open up doors for yourself, definitely do stuff with the Career Center. Definitely make a point of like putting yourself out there and trying to get informational interviews or just reaching out to people, who you're interested in what they're doing.
You guys hear that about the career center? Okay.
Email the New York Times article to all of you if you want to look at.
Yeah, thank you for the advice. I feel like with every Hamilton alum, that's kind of a message that rings true is that the job market, like it or not, is not the prettiest thing ever and it never will be. So just building those kind of like skills and connections to get you just in there is the best way to build your career, especially post graduation. All right, so thank you so much for that. And we're gonna open the floor now to what the time we have left. We have like 20 minutes left. If you guys want to ask them questions right now, feel free. If not, we can just keep asking them. So, does anyone have anything?
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so do you guys have any like gig stories from when you were in jazz band or just from postgrad?
Enlighten us, yes.
I have kind of a funny one. A lot of them I don't think we can tell, but I do have one that involves me and Charlie that I think he'll probably remember.
Oh boy.
So, real question: the Annex Tolls Pavilion, is that still the current name of like the main? Okay, okay,
Yeah.
so we're on the
Yeah.
same page. So, towards the end of college, Charlie and I have been in a lot of different band formats. My favorite, I think it's probably his two, at least for the bands we were in together. We were in a band called Johnny Fontaine, and it was a
Yes.
nine-piece funk band. We somehow convinced one of our favorite singers from an a cappella group named Tumbling After to be our front woman. Everything went right. We were tryhards. We were, doing Shaka Khan funk music.
Yeah.
We were having a great time. And lo and behold, we had a paid gig to play at a party at the Annex. So what more can anyone want? So we get there, we have our set list. The one song we had to learn for this gig, at the request of the people paying us, which was a frat on campus, was, hey, do whatever you want, have a great time. Just make sure you know the song "Party in the USA" by Miley Cyrus. Whatever you do. And we're like, absolutely. It was, kind of a hit at the time. No further questions needed. Um, so we get to the gig, we're getting through our set, and it's like, okay, like our patrons come over. It's time to play Party in the USA. We play it. We feel really good about it. The crowd goes wild. They didn't know it was coming, but it was the right thing to play for this crowd. 10 minutes go by. And we're grooving, we're swinging, we're playing our funky, funky funk, and our patron comes over and he's like, "You're doing incredible. No notes. One thing, real quick. Can you play Party in the USA again?" And we're like, "But we just played that." And he's like, arguing eloquently as one does after, we'll call it several beers, probably. Yeah, but you're gonna play it again because I'm paying you. So, we sure enough play Party in the USA a second time. 15 minutes go by. Same patron. Hey, you're doing great. How about that Party in the USA? One more time. You guys got it in you? So, I think our final tally was 5 or 6 encores of Party in the USA.
So funny. I
So,
totally forgot about that. That is so funny, Wes. That is so funny. It's true. It's just the drunker people got, I think the more they forgot that, hey, had already heard the song too. They just like, hey, by the way, have you thought about that?
they wanted to hold on to that feeling.
It's so true. That is so funny.
Anyone think of any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Richie. I'm a sophomore. I'm gonna minor in music, but I'm doing computer science as well. So my question is, because I'm like interested in like the streaming side of like music, I wanted to know from Charlie like what makes Audiomack different, let's say from like the Spotify's or the Apple Musics that people are always using.
That's a great question. So, there's a term in technology, maybe you're already familiar with, really more in business than technology, called product market fit. It's a sort of a thing that you're looking for when you are running or starting a company, which is to what degree is the thing that I'm building, the product, the right fit for the market that I'm taking it to. And so it is elusive and it is idiosyncratic. It's different for every single project and you don't know, what it's really going to feel like until your users start telling you like, hey, I want more of this. And that's what product market fit really is when people start clamoring for your thing, even if it's not in terribly good shape. And so the thing that I think makes AudioMac really distinct from every other streaming service, or for that matter, like any other music company, is that we are the only one that puts offlining, like downloading music to listen when you don't have internet, outside the paywall. It's an ad-supported offline service. So the reason why, and I think a lot of times in the US this can breeze past us a little bit, but if you have very little money to spend generally, then the idea of spending over your data cap and into overages is kind of anathema. It's like a non-starter. Um, Folks all around the world oftentimes don't even work off of, regular cellular data. They work off of data cards where they buy a certain amount of data that they can use. And so for these users, half of the world, has less than $6.85 to spend a day. So the idea of spending, $13 a month on a streaming subscription is again, it's kind of a non-starter. Um, an ad-supported service that allows folks to listen to music offline is kind of the table stakes for folks all around the world who, from our perspective, should not be blocked out of a world-class streaming experience just because they can't afford, the same subscription costs as everybody else. And so I think what we offer is like a more flexible business model, like a sort of a much more accessible platform than other platforms. And that's why when I look at the countries we really thrive in, one of the things that I see is that, these are folks without a ton of money to spend, but who do have cellular devices. And if they download Spotify, it's going to tell them to pay for offlining. If they download SoundCloud, it's going to tell them to pay not only for offlining but for streaming lots of music. They download YouTube, they can stream, but if they lock their phone, the music stops. Sure, we've all had that experience with the YouTube app. And so we have this unique niche for us that I think ultimately is defined by like a structural economic explanation. Like it's about ultimately creating access for some of the poorest people around the world to listen to music.
Thank you. Follow-up question. How I know like Spotify have like really low payment rates for like artists. How are artists compensated with that different ad supported downloading for you guys?
Yeah, it's such a good question. It's a really good question. So we have ads that run across the free tier, and we have subscriptions, which you can pay to remove ads and to get special, features like higher quality streaming or a bunch of other stuff. And so, like other streaming services, um, we take the revenue that comes in from all of the advertising dollars and all of the subscription dollars we have. We pool them up, and then there is, you know, basically legally mandated that 70% of the revenue that you generate then goes to rights holders. Um, so that's the way that it works for us. What we think that we're doing is we think that we are basically saying if you are Spotify, what you're doing is you're drawing kind of like a line across the pyramid of listeners in the world. And you're saying everybody below that line, everybody who can spend less than $13 a month or who can't spend less than $13 a month, kind of isn't worthy to return value to artists, right? They're not worthy to be part of that revenue pool. And so our objective basically is to say, let's create access for those listeners that isn't just getting them the ability to listen to music, but is allowing them to return, in most cases, advertising dollars back to this royalty pool, which we can then return to artists. However, kind of speaking professionally, I think that that's like an insufficient solution for artists because, as you say, we live not only in a world where the best case scenario is that you get penny fractions for each play, but also we live in a world where there is no barrier to creating an unlimited amount of AI generated music and then uploading those to streaming services, which then further fracture and segment up that royalty pool, therefore making like real artists make even less money. And so I really think, um, and I don't know, I don't know how many folks here maybe are kind of interested in technology or entrepreneurship. I know that you are. But some of the most important solutions that lay before us in music and technology are in A, identifying who is a kind of like real person generating music, and also how do we diversify the revenue model for them. I mean, at AudioMac, we've tried a number of ways for artists to make money beyond just getting their, sliver fraction of the revenue pool. Some of that kind of looks like allowing fans to spend in different ways, like maybe buying merch or buying tickets, or maybe just altruistically contributing directly to the artist. But this problem doesn't really get fixed unless the streaming services and also new companies find ways to make sure that that revenue pool is very protected for artists themselves, and that there are new ways to make money on top of this beyond just pooling ad dollars and subscriptions.
Thank you. That was very interesting. So I'd like I forgot what I was gonna say.
That's cool. I'll be here.
We're hanging.
We booked it.
I actually had a question. So when you're composing music for a movie, do you already like do you see the scene that you're gonna compose for, or do you already make the song, then they like buy it from you? Or like how does it work?
That's a great question. And we can have this dovetail in a lot of different directions based on, for instance, if you're a songwriter and you're interested in getting music licensed in movies. But as a composer, a lot of it depends on when a director would like to invite me into their process. So, for a lot of my closest collaborators of the last decade, I'll get the call when they have a script, and they'll say, "Wes, the first thing I want you to do is read my script and write me some music so that like as I revise my script or am even going into shooting." I can just have something playing in my head that like we can pass back and forth and adjust as we go. So I have that type of relationship with some directors. When it comes to like a film actually being shot, so the actors have acted everything out, an editor has started compiling the footage into like a finished film. What'll happen is at some point, the producers and director and editor, they're going to send me over what's called a work print. So this is an incomplete version of the film where the dialogue and the sound is going to be really sloppy and incomplete. There won't be special effects or visual effects. It'll sound like, it was recorded outside because the sound has been cleaned up, that sort of thing. And what I'll do is I'll sit down with the director and, we'll have everything in front of us and we'll just decide where we want music to go throughout the entire film. And so the work kind of in that phase of the process is, and I'm kind of, just condensing a lot of different things in film. Um, I will kind of write my music in software that lets me synchronize whatever I'm writing to the film. And, directly answering your question, sometimes I do have that exact scene in front of me, and sometimes I don't, if it's more at a script level. And I will send that out or do what's called presentations, where maybe I'll have the director and a few producers over to my home studio setup, and we'll listen, and they'll give me notes or pieces of feedback that they want me to work on that they like or don't like about the music. So when everyone's happy, we do what's called a re-recording mix, which is when we go to a movie theater sized room and all that's inside it are a whole bunch of comfy chairs for the various producers, and then a really big mix board. And you'll kind of mix all of the sounds, so all of the dialogue, all the sound effects, all the music into the film in an actual, little film like movie theater, so you can kind of hear how it'll behave in any given movie theater throughout the country. Um, the other thing, and your question kind of touched on this, is let's say you're more of a songwriter. or a music producer or like a beats producer or something like that. You can write music, you can put it out as an album. Charlie's put out several albums with a couple different of his bands that are all wonderful listens, so you guys should check them out. My horror music I don't recommend. It's not soothing listening music. Um, but no, but what will often happen is a director, like directors are the biggest fans of music there are usually. So they'll say, "Hey, I have this favorite band, and they have this one song that emotionally encapsulates what I feel and what I want the audience to feel in a certain scene. Let me pay that artist some money, and they'll let me use it in my movie." And that's often how you get pop songs in movies, or especially on TV shows, if it's if the song's kind of saying everything the characters can't, so to speak.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Or any other? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember what I was gonna ask from. So I like was just looking at the website for Audio Mac because it was interesting to me. So for uploading, is it not like for artists when they're uploading their music, is it not like Spotify where you have to go through like a distributor to upload that music, or is it like can the artist directly upload to the platform?
A very astute question. Yeah. So, for folks in the room who don't know, um, something called a distributor, which goes way, way, way back in time in music history. It used to literally be like the company that you put the hard records on and then drove them to the record stores. Today, distributors are like pieces of technology like TuneCore or DistroKid, and also some, kind of private distributors that only work with major labels that take music from labels or from individual uploaders and then deliver them to all the different stores. So to Apple Music and to Spotify and Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. So when AudioMac first launched, like 2011 or 12, we were like more of like a file locker. We were kind of like you guys wouldn't know about this, but it's like Mega Upload or MediaFire, like, and pretty soon thereafter we were like a service that you would go to that would generate like an embedded player that would you put like on like an old blog, Two Dope Boys or something like that. Um, what that did for us though was it established us as you were saying, like a direct upload service. So what's called user generated content. That's why we're kind of similar to YouTube or to Bandcamp or to SoundCloud in the sense that in the very beginning, the only way to get your music up on Audio Mac was to upload there. And so, like Lil Wayne and Chance the Rapper and NBA Youngboy and these artists, like they all started out uploading on Audio Mac as a direct service. And then we kind of hit a critical mass where a lot of people were listening on the platform. We really kind of had our first toehold like in the South and the Southeast, like Atlanta and Houston, places like that. And we were able to begin negotiating with labels and distributors. And so now you can get your music on Audio Mac either through directly uploading to it, or if you send your music to, a distributor that's affiliated with your label, or you just use a distributor like TuneCore or DistroKid, they will deliver that music to us. That being said, kind of two things to note about that. One, we're a little judicious with the content we take, especially in the era of AI generative music. We don't want to make sure that people are showing up and kind of spamming us with music that no one actually listens to and is maybe just trying to exploit the revenue pool. We want, and it's part of sort of a evolving definition of fraud within music that we have to be really careful about. And then, the second is that, you know, record labels are incredibly powerful. They're the moneyed interests in music. And so they have the ability to kind of negotiate the terms of what can appear on the platform. So, um, what I said earlier about AudioMac being the only major streaming service that puts offlining outside of the paywall, certain record labels say that's not cool with them. And so you will probably find some music where you're like, well, why can't I download this? And it's because, it's the Beatles or it's Taylor Swift or it's some of the most, sought after music in the world. And labels feel like, okay, we can really force people into paying more, via a subscription for this music.
Okay, that makes sense. Then my last question is like, I feel like this is something that I don't like when you're like younger, like your parents, if they don't put you on like a plan or like a thing, like I feel like this is like exactly what I would have wanted when I was like 10 years old. My question is like, why do like not why aren't more people like knowing about this or using it? Is it like something that like people in America don't really use as much? Because I know you said that your user base is mostly in Africa. Do you like know exactly why that is?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, so the US is our third biggest country at Audio Max, so it is pretty significant to our user base. As I mentioned, we have over 50 million monthly active users. So that's a lot of people, but it's not, Spotify has like over 700 million monthly active users. So um, again, very astute question because our US user base skews really young. So young, in fact, that like on the weekends and on summer breaks, our user activity in the US drops substantially. Like when kids get new phones for Christmas, our activity jumps a ton because they're able to download a bunch of new songs. Our user activity in the US tracks very closely, with the habits of younger folks. And that's an amazing thing. Again, thinking in terms of like structural economic inclusion and exclusion. That's exactly right for young folks in America. The question as to whether or not why we're not bigger in the U.S. or why aren't we kind of like nose to nose with like an Apple Music or a Spotify here? My answer to that is because the per capita income in the US is like much higher. And so it's much easier for your parents to put you onto a family plan on Spotify. And there's tons of folks in the US, I mean, literally millions of people in the US, that's not an option for them. And I think I'm very biased, but that we're the best option for them. You do just hit download, you're in there. You got to watch an ad every now and again, but you get to offline music and you get to stream music on demand, and we have everything. So, but yeah, those are great questions.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak with us and just spend time with some Hamilton students. I have one more like really quick fun question. This is a question I ask to literally anyone I interview. I just think it's really fun, the type of answers alumni can come up with, and that is if you could go back in time and talk to your freshman college self and tell them anything, what would you tell them? And this goes for both of you. So anything, what would it be?
Wes, you want to go first?
Yeah, well, I told you guys a short version of the story of how Doc Woods, my mentor at Hamilton, pulled me aside as a 16-year-old and said, "Hey, if you come to Hamilton, I'll make you a monster." I think the slight amendment I would make to that to freshman Wes, just to tell him what was in store for his future was, "You will be a music monster, just a monster music monster." Um, no, but I think the special thing about Hamilton for me was just discovery. It was the discovery that when I was the best version of myself and, was vulnerable enough to say, these are the things that are important to me. These are my values. These are the things that I'm not as interested in. It put the best people in my life I could hope for. And I don't, I would never want to take that feeling of discovery away from my younger self. Like, that journey is how Charlie and I became friends, and how me and Charlie and our friend Ian, who you heard us talk about, our friend Tim, especially, how we just, not knowing anything we were doing. It's just a cold day in Clinton, and we're messing around in one of the practice rooms, like how we discovered some of the funnest times we had at Hamilton. And I really think that is like a quintessential part of the Hamilton experience is going with no idea, just, a slight compass pulling you in a certain direction of what your values are and what you're passionate about, and, be pleasantly surprised that you'll be transformed and you can't see the future coming.
So true. Couldn't agree more, Wes. It's a great way of putting it. Um, yeah, I very much agree. I really feel like if I go back, talk to my scared September 2007 freshman year self, I would say um, find find a way to really do the thing that excites you the most. I think in life, it's very easy to run from things. It's a lot harder to run to things. And if you could kind of clock yourself every now and again and say, am I running to or am I running from? And try to focus in on what do I want to run to. Um, Kind of changes the whole compass of your path. Excuse me. So much of your life, and in particular of your professional life, stands before you and lays before you to be kind of defined by your own choices. Um, and operating from a position of strength is like an amazing place to be in terms of how you think about yourself. And so, you know, I think again and again, the lesson that I was glad that I learned, and I think, Wes, I forget how you put it, but you put it really well earlier, um, is, continue to make the choices that make you feel kind of like emboldened and excited. Um, and I just want to say to everybody in the room, thank you so much for coming to this. It's really fun to talk to you.
Yeah.
And it's I hope, no matter what your path ends up looking like, um, there is a kind of a almost unexplainable gratification in turning your striving and sweat and hard work uh, into a person, that you can kind of explain to somebody. And that's the path. Don't beat yourself up for not having been 15 years out of college yet. It takes work, and you build yourself brick by brick, and you don't look the way you want to look early on, and that's all right. That's it's just about the perseverance and again, running two. Try to run two.
Yeah, I really like that 15 years, Charlie, because I think you raised another interesting point with that, which is I think especially in Hamilton, there's a pressure to be really successful and performative immediately after Hamilton.
So true.
And especially right now, like it's really sad because this is, it feels like a more cynical time in our country than it typically is. And it might be worth you guys hearing you know, optimism and cynicism are cyclical, and just because if you're eyeing what the future might hold for you, that 15-year number is a great number. Your life doesn't really start until your late 30s, where we are, or even your early 40s, where a lot of our friends are. Because by that point, that'll be where maybe if you're lucky, you found the special person in your life, you're thinking about a family, you're thinking about all those major milestones, and you don't have to rush that. And you don't have to have success fall into your lap too early. Like you can take time to find yourself, and it takes a lot of patience just to have the right opportunities come your way that change your life.
Yeah, totally agree with all that. Thank you so much for those words of wisdom. So, um, we do want to keep everyone on schedule, so we'll let everyone go here. Thank you guys again so much for coming. Hope you enjoyed, and yeah, keep in touch with the Career Center. You heard it from them.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it, guys.
Message
Have a
all
good
of your
night.
emails if you want to talk to them. You said you were going to.